Distinguished guests, please welcome to the stage moderator Kimmy Yam and our esteemed panel.
All right, thank you so much, guys, for having us. I'm Kimmy. I'm a reporter at NBC News for NBC Asian America. We are here for Heritage Month, so of course, if we could first give a hand to all our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islanders in the room. Because, you know, existing in itself is a feat. So this panel today that we're doing is called Caring for Mental Health in AA-NHPI Communities. It's definitely something so near and dear to my heart as someone who has also dealt with mental health issues but grew up with this stigma against speaking about it. In 2019, suicide was the leading cause of death for AA-NHPIs between the ages 15 to 24. And AA-NHPIs were also 60% less likely to have received mental health treatment as compared to their white counterparts. So today, really, our panel is gonna be talking about some of those unmet needs, some of those challenges to talk about, to discussing mental health in our communities. I'm sure so many of us are familiar with that, and the wonderful, wonderful, incredible work that our panelists are doing to kind of break down some of those barriers and come up with these solutions. First, to start off, I'd like to start off on this side, if everyone could just introduce themselves and briefly just talk about what they do.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Pearl Pugh. I'm the president of neuroscience at Johnson & Johnson. And I really believe that mental health is physical health. And that's something hopefully we'll have the opportunity to talk about later. It's so very important. And with that being said, we know that there's a mental health crisis in this country, and it's something that we really need to address, including within the AA-NHPI community. We want work to ensure that all patients have access to care, to education, and also to the latest innovations in treatment. So I'm really delighted and honored to be here.
Awesome. Samira.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samira Khan. I am a Pakistani Muslim New Yorker, American. Also the eldest daughter, which comes with its own trauma. A child of immigrants, second trauma. I'm here representing SAPA, which is the South Asian Public Health Association, as the president. SAPA is a national volunteer-run organization. It's been in existence for 25 years, and we're focused on promoting the health and well-being of South Asians across the country. Given the lack of data about mental health, what we do know is that 1 in 5 South Asians, so this is a very underreported statistic without the proper data, 1 in 5 South Asians suffer from mental health problems. South Asians are also the biggest group that carries stigma around mental health, so not only is it underreported, but people also don't seek treatment. And so mental health has become a very big focus for SAFA to really advocate for the culturally relevant care that's out there, raise awareness about what mental health looks like in the South Asian community, and how we can really just foster more connection between patients, providers, and those who are providing research on this. So I'm excited to talk more about that later today.
Awesome. Crystal.
Hi, everyone. My name is Crystal Canare. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am a proud Filipina American, also the eldest daughter of immigrants, the descendant of farmers, fishermen, warriors who fought through war and colonization. And I both carry their generational wounds and their legacy of community care through the work I do as a person with lived mental health experience, as well as the deputy director of NAPIMA, which is the National Asian American Pacific Islander Mental Health Association. And similar to SAFA, we're a national organization that supports the mental health of ANHPI communities through both mental health trainings, community programs, and policy and advocacy. I'm looking forward to talking about that more.
Amazing. Myron?
Hey, good morning, everyone. Myron Kwan. I am first generation, I suppose, or maybe second generation Toy American, grandparents and parents of working class folks who helped raise me in Berkeley, California, first generation to get all the graduate degrees, many of them. And I also identify as a recovering civil rights attorney as well as a community organizer. It is what it is. My day job, I actually run something called Pacific Asian Counseling Services. There's about a dozen of us left in the country. We're community mental health agencies that specialize on serving AA and HPI low-income folks. I'm looking forward to a conversation trying to figure out the best solutions to move things forward when it comes to mental health.
Thank you so much, guys, for joining me on this panel. I'm going to jump around a little bit, so I'm going to start with Samira. One of the issues that we tend to see in our immigrant communities is not only just surfacing mental health issues, but really having that vocabulary to talk about it. I was wondering if you could get into this just a little bit. How does that really materialize when, Asian Americans are trying to seek or need mental health help? And what's kind of out there right now so that we can kind of mitigate that issue?
It's a great question, Kimmy. And like I had mentioned, mental health is such a big prevalent issue within the Asian American community, especially the South Asian community, but it's just very underreported. And one of the reasons for that is because of the vocabulary that's used around mental health, right? Within Western mental health practices, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, these are the common terminology that's used to diagnose someone. But within, especially the South Asian, community, this is not something that we have language for. Oftentimes, mental health problems manifest as physical issues. So someone might be, having stomach issues, sleep problems, heart palpitations. And so when they go to their doctor and they describe the symptoms they're having, they're not going to immediately think, oh, they have a mental health issue. They're going to start referring them to cardiologists or gastroenterologists, and it's like a whole whirlwind of issues, right? And now, you're 4 or 5 months down the line, you're seeing a cardiologist, you have no heart issues, but it's like, oh, they were actually suffering from anxiety. And so you see this a lot, especially in the older population who has never really come to terms with these languages. And they're carrying so many years of this generational trauma. And the way that it manifests is not typical, or it's not discussed within mental health practices. And then you have the younger generation who is familiar with these terms, but then how do they go to their parents and their grandparents and their aunts and uncles and explain that they're suffering from these issues, right? If they go to their parents and say, I have depression, there's that barrier, they don't understand what that means. And so we really need to have more culturally linguistic tools readily available, right? And to have that, you need to have people that look like us, who are within the community, who are working in the mental health sphere to bridge that divide and understand how mental health manifests in the community, and then bring it back to practice, to leadership, to research, and integrate that, and develop these culturally relevant trainings for other mental health providers who maybe don't look like us, to help bridge that trust also for the community, so that they feel more comfortable in going out and getting that care that's needed. And organizations like NAPIMA are working on that, and SAFA also hopes to really start to up that awareness about that linguistic barrier.
Absolutely. I think that is such an important point, particularly the way that it manifests in these sorts of physical kind of concerns. And it's something that we've heard so often across our communities, and also that kind of generational domino effect when you don't address it. I'm going to go to Myron next. One of the, I guess it's not a new topic, but I think it's newer for us in terms of speaking about it, is gun violence. And this is something that has particularly impacted our communities in the past couple years, especially with Monterey Park, and just a couple days later, we're looking at another shooting in Half Moon Bay. Myron, I was wondering if you could tell us what it's like and how we go about addressing these sorts of mental health needs connected to issues like gun violence, when we're already dealing with this existing resistance in our communities to talk about mental health in the first place. How do you get over that hump?
Yeah, thanks, Kimmy. That's a super loaded question, so to speak. Again, I was very privileged and honored to be able to work with all the other Asian American, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander leaders in Los Angeles during the Chinese Lunar New Year Monterey Park shootings, and a few days later we had the Half Moon Bay shootings as well. It is rough, right? Because again, for many of us who come to this country, whether it's first, second, or third generation, we came here as refugees, we might have escaped World War II. APAICS serves a lot of Cambodian Americans who survived the killing fields. So we already start with that as one of the basics in terms of trauma and triggers that occur with our community members. I mean, to cut to the chase in terms of how we try and get folks into prevention or early intervention or treatment, it really has to be a two-way street, right? Right now, Western medicine is about talk therapy. It's about individualism, and for those of us who identify as NHPI, it's about collectivism. It's about where we came from. It's about blessing ceremonies, gardening, cooking. How can we do things in a way that is, so-called community-defined evidence practices? So I think there's a lot of solutions out there to move us forward and have these conversations and do a lot more to help our community members in need, but we have to stop using the model that's suggested by mainstream psychology and counseling, and really look at what our community members have been doing for centuries, whether it's meditation, what have you, and how do we ensure that that's acceptable in terms of basic practices.
Absolutely. And this kind of goes to my next question. I'm going to skip to Crystal next. Because as you mentioned, Myron, talk therapy, I think often does dominate our discussions about mental health. But at the same time, it's not something that our communities are always particularly comfortable with. It is more so a Western form of treatment. And especially in speaking with a lot of our elders, when you bring them into kind of that sort of clinical setting, it can be daunting, or talk therapy kind of environments may not be quite so effective, as experts point out, when you're just not used to that sort of solution in the first place. Crystal, I'm wondering if there is a place for sort of everyday community members to get in on mental health and kind of contribute in that sort of healing when there is this, dominant idea that talk therapy is, kind of the only solution in a lot of Western environments.
Yeah, Kimmy, that's a great question. And my short answer to that is we need all of it. In the same way we call 911 or just help somebody get physical services when they break their leg, we should know what 988 is, the suicide prevention lifeline, or we should know what to do when we have conversations with people when they are experiencing mental health challenge, instead of, feeling like, oh, I don't know what to say, like, what is that you actually say? And so one thing that NAPIMA offers is mental health first aid. Consider emotional CPR. It teaches people how to have conversations with their loved ones, with a stranger that may be experiencing a mental health challenge or even a mental health crisis. And how do you have those conversations in a culturally relevant way? The approach that you may have with your friend or your peer may be different from what you have with your elder in your community. And so similar to what Myron said, knowing what those professional supports look like that may work, but also what those other support strategies that are more culturally relevant would be as well. And so just wanted to point those things out. And in general, when you think about like the ANHPI community, we've said we're most likely to not seek services, but there are ways in which we can be culturally grounded. One of my former EDs says that this too is mental health, is a big catchphrase, because we also need to redefine mental health. It's not just a pathology of having depression or anxiety. It's also thinking about what are the things that give you strength, what are the things like farming or having blessings that really ground you in your identity, because when you reclaim who you are as ANHPIs, that too is mental health and your healing.
That's such a beautiful point, I think, to make, especially since seeking mental health help for so long in our communities has kind of felt like this tacit admission of some sort of problem, when you're really talking about reclaiming a lot of this power. I want to go to Pearl next, and you mentioned that you're really passionate about the ways in which we speak about mental health in the first place. Asian Americans have historically had this issue with feeling that mental health and seeking mental health is so, taboo. And over time, it's kind of led to flawed perceptions around mental health, or just not talking about the issue at all. And there's, of course, issues as well, as many experts have mentioned, in accessing this sort of information and accessing help. Pearl, I'm wondering how we should be thinking about mental health, given the challenges that we kind of come from, and especially how do we kind of go into this sort of topic and seek treatment when it's already so difficult for us to navigate this system, this healthcare system?
Well, first of all, it is going to take the whole entire ecosystem to work together because mental health is it's a crisis in this country. We know that the COVID pandemic has exacerbated and fueled the mental health crisis in this country, and we need to work collectively as patient advocates, healthcare providers, policymakers, support groups and community groups, as well as industry to really address this problem. I think particularly within the AANHPI community, not only do you have the mental health stigma, but you also have a lot of what was just discussed in terms of some of the cultural barriers and access to care. So I think we need to work together to make sure that we're training culturally relevant healthcare providers. That's something we know there's not enough providers in this space, and the demand for services is so significant. We don't have enough psychiatrists. We don't have enough mental health social workers. We have a flooding in of nurse practitioners and physician assistants that are coming into the space, but they're not trained. They're coming in because there's a huge need because of the crisis. So we need to make sure not only that we are training them with regards to mental health, but we're also providing culturally relevant training because that's going to be important. We need outreach services in the communities to ensure that people feel that there are groups and support to help them, like all of the groups that are represented here. And then we need language. We need language materials from an education and resource standpoint to really help so that people can seek that. And then I think, there's generational differences as well, which was also alluded to. How we approach maybe younger generations in terms of getting this information around resources and education out there to them may be very different than how we do it for the elders group. The elders group may be more community-based, whereas the younger generations that are here in the US right now, maybe they're looking at social media, maybe they're finding their information the way that a lot of young people are right now. And so we need to make sure from a communication channel standpoint that we're reaching out where they are, so that they can feel supported and connected in the ways that they communicate and learn.
Absolutely. I think that it's so important, and so many of us, our panelists here, have kind of brought up that it feels like it's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all solution. And I really respect how many of you brought up the generational differences and how we should be tackling this differently between generations. I feel that our generation on stage today is kind of in this in-between where I think the younger generations are having a much easier time talking about mental health because the stigma has begun to kind of break down. The older generations and our parents are still in this, they're still learning. And so I'm wondering if we could all, I'd like to pose this question to the group and we can kind of go down the line about, given the kinds of, this sort of phase that our generation is in, I'm wondering what compelled you to go into this field, given what we might be hearing from our relatives, our family, and then contrasted with what the younger generation is really going through. Was there a moment or a specific person that really pushed you into doing this sorts of mental health work? And I'd like to start right here with Pearl.
Great, thank you, excuse me. I have family members and loved ones who have suffered from mental health conditions. And I saw firsthand how difficult it was that my older family members did not want to speak about it. And therefore it left them isolated in terms of the support for them as caregivers for some of the younger generation who were dealing with the mental health conditions. And so I think it's something that is challenging, frankly. And in my generation, I'm in that sandwich generation, we have to serve to kind of bridge those differences between the generations to help sometimes kind of translate and talk about in a very open and transparent manner what needs to be done. And there's no shame in seeking help. In fact, you really should seek help because we don't want to wait to that point where you end up having, a real crisis. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that. And with that kind of personal experience within my extended family, it's really motivated me to be part of the neuroscience team at Johnson & Johnson, where we have a 7 decades long experience committed to developing innovations and treatments for neuropsychiatric conditions. And we have a long-term commitment in the future in investing in R&D to really come up with new innovations and treatment.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Samira.
Sure. So I wouldn't say there's one moment or one person that motivated me. It's really just observing our community, right? I grew up at the mosque. My family, we had my grandmother living with us, my mom, my dad, and just seeing that intergenerational trauma play out, right? My grandmother was alive during partition of India and Pakistan, and she lived in India, and then her and her family had to move to Pakistan. And she was a young child, and then she got married off at the age of 15. And her goal was to ensure that all of her kids got married later in life, were able to finish their careers. She made all of them go into the health field. I have doctor aunts, and my mom's a pharmacist, and then my mom's story of immigrating to this country, leaving her family behind, living in a little small apartment in Woodside, dealing with all the traffic and the noise. And she was like, I was watching Friends on TV. That's what I was expecting apartments to look like, right? And so living with her in-laws in this one-bedroom apartment. And then seeing that manifest with the way that they handle with my siblings, right? I'm the eldest, so I feel like I'm that bridge between them. My younger brothers are Gen Z, and so they're really in tune with the mental health and their needs. And so trying to foster that dialogue between the parents who have this generational trauma that their only goal was to survive when they came into this country. My dad used to work day and night, right, to pay for school for himself and then send money back home to his parents. Mental health was the last thing that he was concerned about. And to this day, he's the pillar of our family and his family, that resilience and strength. But what is he going through on the inside? No one knows. And we don't really talk about that. Whereas with my brothers, they're very open. If they're feeling upset, everyone will know. They will make sure. And so, trying to I think have my brothers understand, our parents have gone through so much trauma and they don't talk about it. And sometimes we need to prime them. And trying to explain to my parents that yes, depression is real, anxiety is real, and we can't just brush it off. We have to, treat it. They can't just be strong. And so I think that really compelled me to, just move forward and understand the community more and understand what mental health looks like in our community and how we can just bridge that gap and treat it.
Absolutely. That is so interesting, Samir, that you're basically under one house, you see the progression of, mental health discussions. And man, Gen Z is scary. You guys intimidating as hell. So, wow. Crystal, I'd love for you to share as well.
I was going to say one story, but I think I'm going to go piggyback off yours, Samira. So in college, I was a part of the Filipino Cultural Association at the University of Maryland, and every year we would put on a Philippine culture night. So we would have a musical or a story that we would present to our families around what we think is most pertinent when we think about our Filipino-American identity. And my senior year, this was before Kim's Convenience came out, we had a play, a musical around a family that had a supermarket, Mercado's Mercado, and we ended up talking about the different generations and their experiences, from the elders to them thinking about the Philippines, to the parents trying to assimilate, to strive for the American dream, to the college students really trying to figure out what their identities were, but also trying to figure out how to navigate things that they were experiencing, the stressors, their identities as different communities would often do. And so I ended up using that play. I was wanting to go into med school, didn't know what to do afterwards, but in between that, I wanted to figure out, okay, a lot of my peers are going through mental health challenges, and this was our first way of experiencing it. What does the mental health field actually look like outside of school? And I ended up applying to SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration, with that play. And through there, that's when I ended up getting an interview with their Office of Behavioral Health Equity, and then from there, the rest was over. So just really wanted to, because of the things I was experiencing at home and really centering my experiences as a PhilAm, I ended up being at our leading agency on substance abuse and mental health and talking about Filipino-American behavioral health. When I was an intern, I would end up doing a webinar on Filipino-American behavioral health, and then from there joined different nonprofits that would focus on that. And so I feel just recognizing, honoring the legacy of those other Asian American, Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander mentors that were in SAMHSA, as well as those that were in the community, really propelled me into doing this more. I did a conference for them, one of my last things for that internship, and I was only supposed to shadow their Achieving Whole Health training. It was actually NAPIMA, my now organization, that I was shadowing this training for. And it taught people how to become wellness coaches in the community. And I was supposed to only shadow, but then they awarded me, surprised me with a certificate and said, you're not just an intern, you're part of the ANHPI community, and now you're a certified wellness coach. So continue to do what you're doing and doing that hard work in the various ways that you do. And so that was my moment, and it was because of the other people that were around me that told me that I could do it as well.
That is awesome. That is so powerful, and that really centers kind of this idea of community care and love that we really, really, the ANHPI community really rides on. So that's awesome. Myron, I'd love to hear from you, whether it's a moment or a mentor.
Sure. Gosh, I've been listening to the other panelists. I'm similarly have to change it a little bit, I suppose. I mean, the main takeaway is probably, again, I'm a little bit older. I survived in the 90s. I'm a part of the queer community. I remember ACT UP HIV/AIDS. I remember how mental health was such a huge issue within the queer community because of microaggressions, outright discrimination. Things were really bad back then in terms of transgender women of color being murdered. It hasn't changed in 2024. And so that was one of the ways that I was introduced to mental health, was just thinking it's not about the individual, it's about the environment that is, actually trying to harm you directly is not friendly. Those are very clear things that help drive my values and get me to where I am today. And then the other part, I suppose, is the last 6 years I've been very lucky. I've the white picket fence dream life, married to a Wharton MBA, professor at UC Irvine. We have 2 kids, foster adopt, Cambodian American, from Long Beach. So you would think everything's perfect, but yet the same thing. Working with child welfare as a same-sex couple, dealing with their homophobia and all kinds of weird stuff from them in terms of comments. Having 2 kids who have been seeing feelings doctors for at least 6 years now, and trying to advocate, educate, both the school system in terms of what their needs might be when it comes to mental health, and again, continually advocating, trying to teach the child welfare, mainstream social workers, bureaucrats perhaps is a better word, this is not what's happening. This is what the kids went through. We love them. This is how we're going to take care of them. And you're doing, again, this more Western model of the Brady Bunch and everything works out fine, and you're not, again, recognizing perhaps their bio family, again, having survived the killing fields and being Cambodian American, the loss of their bio sisters. So for me, it is a lot of personal stuff as well. So oftentimes, as we try and help community members through PACS, I draw upon, I'm fueled by all the things that happened to me and my family, because really, again, if we could just break out of this one model and this one way of looking at things that's very Western and very American and individualistic, and look at the complexity of our families and of our kids, I think we'll do a lot better.
Absolutely. Oh, yes.
Advocacy is huge. You can tell that there's diversity in our community and how mental health should be treated. And one thing that's very different about this space, and I've worked in a number of therapeutic areas, including in oncology and lots of infectious diseases, but one thing that's really different about the mental health space is a lot of the people with lived experience or who are living through this experience are not able to advocate for themselves. If they are really in the throes of, like severe depression or severe anxiety or bipolar or schizophrenia, a lot of these patients cannot get out of bed. They cannot function in terms of their activities of daily living. So it's hard for them to have a voice. It's different than if you have, a physical ailment. Even though mental health and physical health are all one part of one human body, it's hard for them to be able to have that voice. So all of us really need to be advocates for people who are living with mental health conditions, because oftentimes, if they're really in the throes of it, they cannot speak for themselves.
Absolutely, and that's such a great point, Pearl. And also, Myron, I think what everyone up here said today is so inspiring, because we may not have grown up with the understanding around this, but it's so cool to see what our generation kind of does Hearing you speak about how you deal with this with your own kids, or just basically everyone else on this stage, just talking about how we're breaking down that language, that vocabulary. It's so cool and so moving. Right now we have just a couple minutes for audience questions. I believe there's a runner somewhere with the mic, but if anyone with audience questions, I will pick, and then, okay, we will start right away. Right here in the middle. Okay, I'll get you next.
Hello. Hey, good morning. My name is Patrice Jew. I work at Google. All views expressed here are my own. I ask a little bit about what you were saying about the mental health crisis and all the needs of our community. I'm curious about how AI, artificial intelligence, and tech companies, and just the advent of having more data, being able to aggregate the data, being able to provide more resources to these populations might be able to influence and transition in this space.
I think we'll go to Pearl for this one.
It's a great question, and it's one that I would ask you, being somebody representing, and throw back at you, somebody representing the tech industry. I mean, clearly we are in an era of big data. And so I think there's a lot of ways to try and consolidate the data, but the data are kind of everywhere, right? So we need to make sure that we have good data going in if we're aggregating them, or from an AI perspective to then disaggregate them. I know from a healthcare industry standpoint, what we tend to look at in terms of real world practice is really claims data, but claims data don't speak to the details of what was just represented here and discussed here. Like if you're manifesting and you're coming with a collection of symptoms, maybe you're not getting that formal diagnosis of anxiety or depression because it's manifesting in other physical symptoms and ways. So I think AI can, at the surface, kind of do a lot to kind of consolidate data that's available to show us patterns and trends. But there's a lot more beneath the surface, I think, that we need to dig into that are culturally relevant, as discussed here on the panel. And I think that's something that AI can't do. It really requires us, I think, collectively as an industry to really dig in further to understand those insights and then see if there's ways to maybe correlate some of what we're seeing with diagnosis codes to understand the patterns that are out there.
Absolutely. We had a question in the front.
Hello, good morning. My name is Bismaya Pariyar. I'm from Nepal, but I work as a director for Rape Crisis Center. I know it's been like 20 years I'm working in this field, and we deal with mental health issue who are victim of sexual violence and domestic violence. As what's her name, Samira said, in South Asian community, they don't talk about this issue. Even if they talk and if they come forward, there is no services available. I mean, we have to wait so long to find the counseling. And, is there any way we can work with the policy level that, we can encourage more, API community to be a, mental health worker? I mean, I have 2 positions open since June, and we could not find any South Asian mental health counselor. This is so big issue, and these victims are dying inside every day. So that is my concern. Thank you.
Yeah, Samira.
Yeah.
Or what would do Samira and then Myron?
I think one of the biggest barriers to people going into the mental health workforce is that they don't, it's kind of a catch-22, right? They don't see themselves represented, and they think that a lot of what's being taught and prescribed is from this Western point of view, and anything that's considered Eastern or alternatives is kind of looked down at as junk science or whatever it is. And so I think we need to fix curriculums to really integrate alternative forms of mental health therapies and integrate that as well. And I think that would maybe incentivize more people to go into this field because they don't have the power to maybe re-change everything. And I think that comes from the top down.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Myron?
Yeah, I'm just 2 points. It's such a critical issue. Number one, again, we're in this AA/NHPI space, and I guess we just need to always call out gender-based violence and misogyny, because that is a part of all the anti-Asian hate in this country, and we don't recognize it. We always just say it's just violence, and it's actually no, majority are women, so that's a huge problem. Number two is something that I've been pushing at the White House, SAMHSA, Sacramento, LA County. We need to change it up a little bit, because right now, we're not going to pipeline our way out of this. We're not going to be able to create a whole bunch of paraprofessionals and LCSWs and PsyDs and whatever. There's just not enough human beings to do that work. What we have currently are lots and lots of newer Americans, immigrants, those who are bilingual, bicultural, in different language, and we need to figure out as soon as possible how to train them to be something, either certified wellness coaches, community health workers, what have you. There is a solution, and the solution really is at the local, state, and possibly national level to figure out how to get all these people. They speak the language, they know the culture, they're able to work with the community members appropriately, but they don't have a BA or an AA, they certainly don't have a master's. And again, I'm all for the pipeline and interns and all of that, but that will only move the needle a little bit. The real solution is somehow ensuring that the local level and beyond, we're able to bring in all these other people who are already doing great work, whether it's in a church, a synagogue, the temple, get them out there and have them certified, be a part of the work that's already there. So that to me is a clear solution, because I'm just like you. We always have these openings, and no one's coming. They're underpaid. They can make more at the county, or they can make more money elsewhere. But there's a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of people already doing work in the community, and we need to get them more money and get them within the system to help out.
I think we have time for just one more question right here in the front.
So, what kind of support is provided? So I'm just going to share this because I feel like this is a safe space. I experienced outright racism at one of my previous employers, where I was given the Asian eye on 2 separate occasions by my supervisor. There's no photographic evidence, there's no video evidence. I have reached out to organizations, I've tried to contact attorneys for support. And I haven't really gotten a lot of support. I've reported to the EEOC, ACLU, and I did get support from ACLU. They helped me with my report to the EEOC. Just getting my story out there is, to me, something needs to be done, because there are other people experiencing similar racism. So what kind of support can people like myself who've experienced things like this, what is out there, and what do you advise for people like me?
We'll start with Crystal.
Yeah, I'm so sorry you had to experience that first and foremost. I think as someone that has also gone through like a hate crime more recently, one thing that I also experienced was I couldn't identify the person. I just heard them say, "Go back to where you came from," and they ran off. And so one thing that I did not call the police. You've been struggling with possibly those experiences too. I ended up reaching out to AAJC and others to at least go and report it in their Stop the Hate tracker. Mm-hmm. And then in addition to that, I think just as important as reporting it is trying to find those mental health supports and communities that could support you as well. One thing that I did was share my story, and it just went on. There's an article right now that came out on Friday of me sharing my story and talking about how I live in an RV full time, and I go across the country, and the amount of people that are experiencing anti-Asian hate or just blatant racism, so many people. And so there are actually grants out right now of journalists that are reporting on anti-hate and sharing those stories for people, even if they are not going to go through the lengths of having it be a hate-based crime. And so even just that is something that I can offer to you, and I'd love to talk to you further because we do a lot of things, and particularly on the mental health side, in supporting people that have witnessed just outright racism in their workplace, in their communities. And so thank you for just sharing in general right now, and excited to work with you.
Thank you so much, Crystal, and thank you so much for sharing. And I want to reiterate, this is a safe space, and I'm really grateful that you feel comfortable sharing with us today on this panel of wonderful experts. We are going to wrap up, but just some final thoughts. I know that this work is difficult. I think that a lot of times, especially when we deal with a lot of mental health work, we tend to, especially as Asian Americans, kind of absorb a lot of that trauma, a lot of those feelings. It's definitely heavy work. I'd love to go down the line and hear from each of you if there's one kind of self-care tip, if there's something that you do that really keeps you grounded and really keeps you, you know, upbeat and positive to stay in this sort of work. We'll start with you, Pearl.
Yeah, I mean, I think self-care is really important. You know, this is all difficult work in this space. You see the impact of the work that we do with patients, but you also see the suffering from patients and people with lived experience in this space. I try to look for ways to have joyful experiences to kind of counterbalance that. Those who work with me know that I have some Gen Z children, and you know, Gen Z is very fun and interesting in many ways, but I look to spend and create memories and experiences with my kids by following, you know, musical bands across the country in my spare time, and just having a lot of fun. So I look for those kind of moments of joy to really counterbalance a lot of the challenges of the work that we do.
That's so lovely. And I think those are some words that we can live by to find that joy here today. Samira.
Sure. So for me, I think burnout is one of the biggest concerns, juggling SAFA work, my actual day job, my family as the eldest daughter of immigrants. You know, it's a lot of paperwork that's involved. It's really just trying to find time for myself and not constantly giving to others. And so I like to go on trips with my friends. We go hiking, we go like off the grid into the mountains, and just like disconnect and connect with nature and each other, right? Like I think community care is, that's, you know, hanging out with your friends is one form of that. And just sharing with others what you're going through, you know, not in some sort of clinical or therapy setting, but just with your friends. It really helps you feel lighter. And connecting with nature, I think, is just so important. You know, in Islam, one of the core tenets is really just disconnecting and meditating. And we do that 5 times a day through prayer. And when I go out into nature, you just kind of see how vast the world is and how small you are and how there's just so much more to, like, you know, work for. And so I always come back rejuvenated and ready to, like, you know, just take on more and like make the world a better place for everyone around us.
Absolutely. I think it's, as the internet says, go out and touch grass.
Yeah, exactly.
Crystal.
I just want to +1 all the things for self-care, but I think this quote of, you know, our resilience should not be an excuse for our continued oppression is often a quote that I keep with me, because it is not just on me to really dismantle systems of oppression, but also just this idea of like community care is so important as well. And if I'm thinking that I have to be a savior and take care of everyone, that's not going to do anything. But this idea that there is this long arc and there are other people around me also, like in this AA-NHPI mental health universe, that gives me hope. And so again, continuing to fight that and just take care of self.
We're being rushed off, clearly. So just make sure everyone knows the difference between self-soothing and self-care. They're not the same thing. Take care of yourself. I teach group exercise 5 times a week. I'm not a stereotype. Enjoy. Follow me if you want, Instagram or Facebook. Do whatever makes you happy. It'll help.
Thank you so much, guys.